Welcome to the Personalized Learning Pathways webinar. My name is Lisa Sitkins, and I have a company called LSS Consulting and uh, I don't even remember it, LSS Connections and Consulting. And I am facilitating the webinar this morning. I have the honor of working with forward-thinking educators, both here in Michigan and across the country, through the Michigan Co-op and the Personalized Learning Task Force. The Michigan Co-op is a network of school districts that believe in student-centered learning, and they collaborate with one another to share ideas and resources to redesign public schools. We kind of think of our group as the crowdsourcing group for innovative ideas, the networking group for educators who want to focus on students and their learning, and the therapy group for innovative leaders. And those of you who are innovative leaders and have your own collaborative groups that you work with probably will understand that therapy group comment. In the Michigan Co-op, we have monthly webinars like this, frequent member calls, and virtual and in-person conferences. I also said it with the Personalized Learning Task Force because that's also, we're combining this webinar together. The Personalized Learning Task Force is a grassroots effort in Michigan that was started by virtual educators and supporters to educate stakeholders about high quality virtual learning, to establish quality standards in non-traditional programs in Michigan, and then to explore accountability changes in our system. So a lot of things that the Michigan Co-op and the Personalized Learning Task Force do overlap. During this webinar today, feel free to put questions in the chat. You're also welcome to unmute your mic if you wanted to ask a question to one of the panel members. So this webinar is about personalizing pathways for students. When we provide those opportunities for students to gain knowledge, skills, and competencies needed for their individual career paths or their individual learning journeys, what we're doing is we're setting them up for their future careers. So I want you to take a moment and think about the careers that we're preparing our students for, and put them in the chat. You can put just one in there if you want, but what specific career paths do you think that we are preparing students for? And just drop those in the chat. Have any ideas there? There's an AI and critical thinking. That's good. Christy's saying, yep, not sure what's going to happen. That is true as well. Yep. I asked Google Gemini what kind of non-traditional careers that students might be pursuing in the future. And some of them I got were urban farmer / environmental scientist, the traveling culinary documentary slash video designer, and the robotics engineer / AI developer, which goes along with what you said, Kim. But what I found really interesting was that the careers that we're preparing them for, that Google came up with, were like a combination of careers. It wasn't just an accountant or a doctor or a teacher. They came up with these non-traditional careers. And so when we think about our education for the future, we really want to personalize learning for students so that they can pursue whatever it is the career that they want. Our panel members today have experience in moving that needle in their states to move towards more personalized learning. So I'm going to have each of them introduce themselves before we get started. So I'll have Dee, and then Dan, Jessica, and Skyly, if we can go in that order.
Hi guys, good morning. I hope it's morning where you are. Um, and my name is Dee Thompson. I'm based in Austin, Texas. I am the founder and principal consultant for DT Strategic Consulting. It is a strategic consulting and lobby firm here in Texas. More importantly, I'm a former high school math teacher and school administrator who has had the opportunity now to switch and work on education policy at the Capitol. Specific to this conversation, I served as chief of staff to the chairman of the Texas Commission on Virtual Education and was the lead lobbyist for the brand new, on the governor's desk, passed legislation, the new Texas Virtual and Hybrid Education Framework. I'm excited to talk with you guys today.
Well, I'll say good morning as well. My name is Dan Paff. I am from Shelbyville, Kentucky, which is just about 30 minutes away from Churchill Downs, with the Kentucky Derby getting ready to happen this week. That'll be a nice visual locator for you. I work for Shelby County Public Schools. We're a district of about 7,000. I was in the classroom for about 20 years before I transitioned into my current role, which is digital learning coordinator, which has a lot of different hats that go underneath it. But excited to talk to you guys today about what we're doing. We have a portrait of a graduate that I think will be a really interesting piece to discuss with this. We're also doing some really neat things with local accountability that ties in really well as well. So excited to have this conversation.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jessica Anderson. I'm the founder and lead consultant for Learner-Centered Leadership. I'm also the assistant superintendent at North Dakota Center for Distance Education. We've actually been around since the 1930s, so we were one of the first. We're celebrating our 90th anniversary this year. We serve just shy of 20,000 enrollments. And we're also transitioning to competency-based. So we'll be one of the first, if not the first, in the country as an asynchronous virtual school that is completely competency-based K-12. As far as consulting goes, I'm excited to support and work alongside of districts that are looking to transform their traditional system, whether it's virtual or brick and mortar, to more of a learner-centered approach, specifically competency-based. So I work with school districts within the country and then outside of the country as well. So excited to have this conversation this morning around a very important topic. So thanks for letting me join you, Lisa.
Hello, everyone. My name is Skyly Kosru. I am a mentor teacher here at West Michigan Virtual Academy in Battle Creek, Michigan. I've been with them for 3 years now. I am a former student and proud graduate of WMVA. I have a deep appreciation for virtual learning and a very unique perspective, having experienced it both as a student and a mentor teacher. So I have firsthand understanding of the benefits and challenges that students face in online education. So look forward to talking to you guys about how I developed critical life skills through the learning these past few years.
Wonderful. Thank you all for your introductions. Uh, when we talk about virtual learning, a lot of times you'll hear a lot of myths. Some of them include students sitting in front of a computer all day long, that teachers aren't engaging with students because they're on the computer, and that special education students can't learn or be effective in virtual learning. So Dee, I'm sure you ran into many of these myths and probably others back in 2021, 22, when you were actually, in the throes of working with the Texas Commission on Virtual Education, developing your report. So can you talk about how the work of that commission and then the report that you have connect to your legislative strategy in Texas?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. And I love that we're going to talk about myth busting because that's actually the frame we tried to bring to the commission. So, the commission, just for a little bit of context so people know what's happening, the legislature in 2021 was basically coming out of the pandemic saying, what do we do about virtual learning? Because we've seen really bad examples of this emergency response version of virtual education. And we want to hesitate to pass large, kind of big laws to kind of redo virtual ed here in Texas. So let's do a commission. So we spent a year studying virtual education, the good, the bad, the ugly, nationally. And one of the things we came across was this constant kind of list of myths about high quality virtual education. And I think one of the most important things we were able to do from the very first meeting of the commission was to reframe the conversation. This conversation wasn't a blame finding mission about emergency response remote instruction. So we gave it a name. Hey, this thing that happened during the pandemic, emergency response remote instruction, is not high quality virtual education. And those two things don't share any words. And so we actually spent some time, to your point about special education, as well as a long list of other myths. You can't do this in early grades. Teachers don't like it or want it. Low-income students can't be successful in this environment. And I think the most important thing we did was a show, don't tell approach to addressing those myths. We actually brought in experts, we brought in teachers, we brought in students to tell their experience in high quality virtual education settings. And that actually helped us connect it. And this will kind of get to the second half of your conversation, helped us connect those conversations with the members of the commission, some of whom also are in the legislature, to what actually matters to them. You know, right now, our education system in Texas, some of the big things people are talking about are our teacher shortages. Well, how does virtual education relate to teacher shortages? And so we were able to help them make those connections by myth busting with actual teachers. We also talk about course access for our rural students. There are a lot of students in Texas in small rural districts who don't have access to upper level math, upper level science, foreign language. And that course access myth, well, I should say the myth being that kids don't want it, won't take it, it's not good for rural Texas. Once they understood this could help address some of their course access issues, it became a priority for some of our rural legislators. And so the myth busting piece very much connected to our strategy. And we've seen now quite a lot of success and support from people who would otherwise talk a lot about the bad parts of what happened during the pandemic, have now come around to say, actually, virtual education done right can be a huge win for our education system. Lisa, you're still on mute.
Thank you. So once the commission met and you created that report, you shared with us the other day that now there's actually action happening.
Yeah.
Can you share some
So,
of
I mean,
that?
this is fresh, exciting news out of the state of Texas. The first education bill passed in our legislative session that we're currently in the middle of was this virtual and hybrid education bill. It repeals our old chapter 30A and writes from scratch, based on the recommendations of that commission, a brand new framework for virtual and hybrid education in the state of Texas. Some important wins for us. Kids are funded at the exact same level as in-person kids, and accountability is fair to kids in these settings in the same way that other schools for in-person instruction are held accountable. We have strong both guardrails for quality on the front end when people want to start these programs, and strong accountability for quality on the back end for student outcomes. To the SPED conversation, we actually put protections in the bill to ensure that these courses meet all federal guidelines and state law for special education kids, and protections for teachers. Teachers cannot be coerced to teach in this environment if they were hired for in-person instruction. And there's a myriad of other things that, again, to your point earlier, we started with the myth busting and these things that people thought were true or not about virtual ed, and they've become now the basis for our framework. And that bill sits on the governor's desk. He is waiting on a couple of other education bills, and he's going to do kind of a collective signing of a bunch of them. I would say the most exciting thing for him, his office, and the state of Texas, especially in the Republican Party, which has a lot of control here in our government, is the connection to work-based learning. There's a ton of flexibility built into this new framework that allows kids immense flexibility to go work full-time jobs, to work apprenticeships that didn't previously exist in law. And we're really excited about the potential for workforce partners, businesses in Texas, now having incentive to come work with districts to figure those programs out and to grow them in our state.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. On the commission itself, for the members that were on there, were there you mentioned there's some legislators on that commission. Were there also business leaders, the Michigan Department of Ed, the teachers union? Like
Yep.
who was
Well,
represented on there?
we didn't have the Michigan Department of Ed.
Oh, sorry, the Department of Ed.
No, so the members were made up of members of the House and Senate, both Republicans and Democrats. The chairman, who I served under as his chief of staff, is a business owner here in Texas. He's a private business owner. There were some higher ed members. There were some regional service centers who kind of work as an arm of our education department here in Texas. Um, and I'm trying to think of who else. Oh, and a member of the State Board of Education as well. So a little bit of the kind of different pieces of the education system, governmental and political, but then also to your point, member of the business community, a member of the higher ed community. It was a very diverse group.
Okay. And now, is it likely that the governor is going to pass this?
Yeah, so we're expecting it was actually listed. Our governor, prior to each legislative session or right at the very beginning, always announces what are called emergency items. Those are his top priorities, and they're actually allowed to move more quickly through the process. And um, this virtual education bill was mentioned as a part of one of his priorities in the larger conversation about school choice. If you guys probably been following national news and are on Twitter at all, you know Texas just passed an education savings account program for the very first time. And so in line with that, he also sees virtual and hybrid education in this bill that we've worked on as a part of this larger conversation on choice and options for families and kids. So yes, long story is we do expect him to sign it, and we're already talking with districts about how to utilize the new flexibilities and the new options.
Wonderful. That's great. So, Dan, your district has been on a 2-year journey in developing the Shelby County local benefits-based accountability model. Can you share with us what does that mean by local accountability model? Because I know when Dee was talking, he was saying they're going to be funded at the same level. And so usually we always tie this funding to accountability, but you're trying to redefine the accountability, what accountability is. And so can you kind of tell us about that?
Yeah, I would love to. Actually, would love to comment on some of the stuff that Dee said as well, because it ties in so well with some of the things that we're doing in Shelby County. I don't think it's any surprise to this group. There's so many benefits to virtual learning overall, but our online program in our district is really unique because it combines our GED program and our alternative program and our virtual program together, where we can kind of tailor make a situation for every kid, whether that is a work-based learning situation or a CTE situation, whatever it takes to wrap around them so we can really meet those kids where they are. And that kind of mindset has been with us for actually quite some time, really pre-me, if you will. I've been with the district for 3 years. We started down a path for a portrait of a graduate, a defensive learning, if you will, long before me. But our community was really involved in that process. And our defenses happened 5th grade, 8th grade, 12th grade. And when those were built, we went to the community and said, hey, what does your perfect graduate look like? And I bring that up because that relates really perfectly to what benefits-based accountability is all about. Because the idea with it is that you want to talk to your stakeholders and figure out what are your expectations so that you can build your organization in a way to allow you to get to that outcome. And so when I'm talking about our online learning program, we've built it in a way that allows us maximum amount of flexibility so that we can meet the kids where they are. But when you think about our entire district, whether we're talking about brick and mortar or whether we're talking about our online side, really the same question exists. How can we build the system to get out of it what you really want us to get? And local accountability is just the next step of that. It's you've told us what you want. Now we've got to hold you accountable for those things. What mechanisms do we have in place? What practices do we have in place that ensures that we're being held accountable to our stakeholders for those things? And I think the challenge that exists in education is that I'm really talking about two stakeholders that may not be looking at the world in exactly the same way. Because from a state perspective, it's probably going to be a test score. But if you're looking at your community overall, your community is probably going to be talking about things like what was in the chat, critical thinking, collaboration, how you communicate. All of those things will be a part of that as well, and that oftentimes kind of gets lost in the wash, if you will, from a state accountability perspective. We started down this path, like you said, 2 years ago, and with really the goal of carrying on that collaborative relationship we have with our community. But what we've learned along the way is what it's also done is generate a whole lot of trust because the way that ours is set up is really, really super transparent. And so, just to give you a backdrop of how that journey began, we went to our community, 50 different community groups actually we went to, and we started with one question, but we ended up asking two more. But the question we asked was really simple. What are your hopes and dreams for the students in our district? Which is similar to what we were asking with a graduate or with our profile of a graduate in terms of what we wanted the graduate to look like, but it's just a little bit different. Because what we did is we then followed that question up with, okay, what do you think matters the most to students? What do you think matters the most to the community? And maybe the most important one, what measures are the most important for us to report on? And so we asked those questions and just shut up and listened. And sometimes it was hard because they were saying some things, and we're like, man, I'd really like to jump in here, but we were really trying to just stay true to what they wanted. And after about maybe a month and a half or 2 months into the process, some themes started to develop, and we could start to see some paths. And as those themes started to develop, what we also recognized pretty quickly is what we thought local accountability was going to look like was not what local accountability looked like to our community at all. We kind of assumed that we were going to end up building a massive dashboard that had all kind of great data connections that we're going to pull in all these different resources, and that's part of the reason I'm involved because I'm techie and digitally oriented, and I was going to clean up all that data and put it into a Looker Studio or Power BI, or we were going to farm it out, and it was going to create a perfect number. But our community was like, "Nah, we don't want any of that stuff. Right? That's not important to us at all. We want something different." And so as we listened, we got again 2 months in, we found maybe 8 or 9 different themes. Actually, I think we started with 11 different themes. We went back to the community and said, okay, is this what you're looking for? And they're like, yeah, change this, change that. And we ended up getting down to 9 themes. And what we did is we said, okay, these are the 9 things that you're looking for. Let's find evidence. And evidence for us came in a lot of different forms. It came in the form, it could be a video, it could be an infographic, could be raw data, it could be a lot of things. But whatever the case may be, it was an opportunity for us to try to give them exactly what they were looking for. Which again, that amount of transparency creates a lot of trust. It creates a more collaborative environment. And I'd be remiss to say if we don't have this figured out perfectly yet, but I think we're well on our way to a pretty good start.
I love the fact that your district took the initiative, that this wasn't something that your state put into law or there was the Department of Ed decided that you had to do this, that you did this because you want to do right by your community. You want to provide your community what it is that they want to see for your students.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you think about, and I think you put our profile of a graduate in there, I'm going to put our dashboard in there in the chat as well. We started this process 3 years ago. I think last year, our state said, you know what, we think local accountability should be part of the state accountability system as well. And so what we're helping to do right now is pilot our local accountability model so that we can say, okay, this is what local accountability could look like. And maybe to flesh that out a little differently, there's still be a state piece in terms of a test score or whatnot. Some of that's being pushed down by the federal government, and that piece is going to be what it is. And I'm not saying that it's not important by any stretch of the imagination, but there's a bigger part of the story. And the bigger part of the story is the local accountability piece, which really lets us show everything that we're doing to meet what the community is asking us to do. And what's been neat for us is we built this at the district level, and I just shared in the chat what our district level one looks like. But we started building these at the school level as well. And the reason that we did that is because when you think about a school district of 7,000, we've got some schools that just look different than others. And so if you're really going to get down to, and I'll use the word customer, but if you're going to get to your customer all the way to that customer, you've got to make sure you're meeting that group. We have my wife is a elementary principal. Her school is a majority minority school, and they do pretty well. We also have two other schools that are very homogeneous, and are not like that. And so to say, hey, the district goals are enough is not really being fair to those individual groups. And as we've done that, I've really loved that whole part of the process. It's kind of turned into a passion project for me at some level. Because when we talk to the teachers about, hey, what evidence do we have that we're doing these things? At first, they're almost like bashful because they don't want to share. They don't think they're allowed to talk about the great things that are happening in their schools. But as we kind of tease them out, then they start to get excited about, hey, we're doing this for our kids and this for our kids, and this is how they're learning how to be collaborative. This is how they're learning how to be a global citizen, which is really a whole lot of fun. It allows our students, allows our teachers, allows our district to kind of get back to the why.
And that ties into what Dee was saying too, is when they were trying to make the case, you said show, not tell, and that's what you're doing. And we talk about that in the Personalized Learning Task Force all the time, and the Michigan Co-op is telling your story, showing people it's not just about the data, it's about the relationships you're building and the growth that the students are making. So I have one follow-up question, Dan. When you say you went to your community, who was involved in that? Like, who were you reaching out to?
It was really about every group that we could connect with. It was Rotary Club groups. It was our SBDMs. SBDMs are our school-based decision-making groups, which would include parents and teachers. It was student advisory councils. It was teacher advisory councils. We have a really influential business person in our district that has a group that we went to them as well. And he actually has been interesting in the entire process because one of the things he told us pretty early on, once we got it rolled out, was that what we're trying to do is what businesses should be doing with their customers on a consistent basis, feeding them that information so they know what's going on to create that goodwill. We've been to like realtors associations. They love it because it really is a great tool for them. Because when people are looking to move into the district, they can say, "Hey, look at what this district is doing. These are the great examples of things they're doing." They can do that at the school level. They can do that at the district level. I was at a farm bureau meeting not that long ago, talking to a group of retirees. It literally was everybody that we could find and connect with. So we could be as reactive to them as we possibly could. But to maybe respond to what you were saying a second ago, if you don't tell your story, somebody else is going to tell your story. And if they're going to tell the story just with numbers, that's okay. And I'm not trying to run from numbers, but at least with our community, when we talked to them and said, "Hey, we could do this, we can do that," they're like, "We don't want those numbers. We don't understand those numbers. We don't understand how they go together. There's another piece for us that's a little bit more important." And that might look different in different communities, right? But the only way you find that out is to really get into the grassroots and talk to them.
Mm-hmm. So over the last 2 years, then what kind of feedback have you gotten from, now that you have the dashboards and things like that, what kind of feedback have you gotten from parents or any of the other community stakeholders?
It really has been good. Businesses have really enjoyed the transparency. The realtor groups have enjoyed the transparency. We have on the backside of our website something that's counting clicks and counting engagement, so we can kind of see how people are doing once they get inside. And once people arrive, they're there for 14, 15, 16 minutes, so they're not just flying in, flying back out. They really get lost in the stories. And so that piece has been really good. The next step for us, frankly, is probably less about me and more about our superintendent and our assistant superintendent and our school leaders. That when they go out and talk to community members, when they go out out and talk to parents, they need to be highlighting that because really the piece that I haven't talked about is none of this really matters if you don't have improvement priorities that are a piece of this as well. And so underneath each one of our big kind of strands, if you will, our vision is inspired learning, leading, and living. We have improvement priorities at the school level, and we're working on that at the district level as well, where we can say, hey, community members, we know this is going well. We know this is broken, and this is our plan to fix it. And, we're getting close to the end of the school year right now. And so soon our school leaders will be adding to that website for theirs and say, okay, this is what we did, or this was the problem. This is what we did. Here are the results. Uh,
Mhm.
again, in an effort to be as transparent as possible. And so, we're early. I think once we get to the end of next year, we're going to know a whole lot more, especially on the school-based side, because those are really, really fresh. And I think most people probably connect more with the school level anything rather than the district level anything. And so I think that's when we're really going to know. But the short-term reviews have been very, very positive.
Wonderful. Thanks, Dan. Jessica, you've been working for and with school districts in North Dakota that are really personalized learning, and it's exciting to hear that about you being the first distance, you say distance learning or virtual program that's going to competency based in the country.
Yes, that's asynchronous. So our learners can come and go, not like a typical school year. So we have learners enrolling today, and then they have a certain amount of time to finish a course. So we allow that flexibility of pace.
Okay, so can you share how the laws in North Dakota then help where you're working with right now and the other districts that you've worked for to be able to customize or personalize learning for all the students, and then how like your state department has assisted with them in navigating those laws?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm thankful I get to serve in a state that is very forward thinking and innovative in education, and that's, I think, a special thanks to Kirsten Baszler, our superintendent of public instruction. She's very forward thinking and innovative, and so she has done a lot to move our state forward as far as innovating. And so one of the biggest shifts was through our Century Code, section 15.1, 6 through 26, and that really allows districts throughout the state to apply for an innovation waiver. And so some of the things that allows school district is flexibility from certain policies to support personalized or competency-based learning. A huge component of that is seat time and how that looks different and shifting some of those requirements. We also allow flexibility in the length of a school day when learners are showing up maybe in the brick and mortar school. And then we can start to look at options such as hybrid learning, workforce, career readiness opportunities through mentorships, and then virtual learning space as well. And then finally, and this is always a big hang up when making the transition to competency-based learning, especially if your state policies and laws don't support this, and that's how your credit system works. And so through our innovation waiver, it really enables proficiency-based grading, and that was a huge hurdle. So we are very excited for what the innovation waivers allow school districts to really serve learners in the way that we all know as educational leaders is best for kids. So those are some of the ways that the innovation waivers support learners in that way. I will say, as I mentioned, Kirsten Baszler, but really our Department of Public Instruction did an immense amount of work researching, looking at best practice, working with teacher union groups. I know sometimes, as Dee mentioned, we don't often think that teacher unions support virtual learning. And in fact, we found the complete opposite. And so we're really walking in tandem with them as they see, as we all do, that it really is an opportunity for learners that maybe aren't served otherwise. We have rural students, for example. They may not have the ability to take some of the CTE courses. We offer vet science, AI, dental assisting. So there's just a whole host of courses that we offer virtually that learners, in a smaller, less populated rural area would not have the opportunity to otherwise take those courses. So DPI has been very supportive in that way. And then again, just researching, as Dee mentioned, what are best practices, and then what can they do at the department level to really help support school districts in their journey to offer a learner-centered experience for kids.
Mhm. And in North Dakota, is there something in law about having graduates be choice ready?
Yes, so that is also was an important shift. So we have what's called Choice Ready Framework, and it's really about graduates graduating ready for whatever comes next for them. So for some learners, it may be college, it may be jumping right into the workforce, and then most recently, military readiness. So at NDCDE, we are in the process and have already developed the first two courses. We have developed a military pathway program. We're working collaboratively with our National Guard. However, the learners that are in the military pathway have the opportunity, to look at other branches of military as well. So we're really excited that this was now included as part of that Choice Ready. And it goes beyond just credits, right? How most of us on this call, we're probably focused on, okay, what are the credits, the courses that I need to graduate, check that box, right? Move on. Well, we're really focusing on what are the skills, the dispositions, those key traits and characteristics that we want our learners to have and be successful with. Going back to Lisa, your first question, what are the jobs of the future? While it may be unpredictable, we know that there are certain characteristics, skills, and traits that we want our learners to have to be successful. So the three kind of focus areas of our Choice Ready framework are academic readiness, career readiness, so that includes CTE, internships, different industry certifications, and then the essential skills, so leadership, communication, responsibility, etc. So we're excited that we have this framework now for our learners, and it really does blend beautifully with our innovation waiver. The two work in tandem together. So a lot of exciting things happening within the state of North Dakota, and we're excited to be able to serve learners in a much more learner-centered way.
Mhm. Very exciting. So that the asynchronous program that you have with the CVE, can you tell us a little bit of details on how that works or how that's going to happen? Because and a lot of us with the personalized learning task force, that is the virtual learning piece. So
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So with our transition to CBE, we will be able to have a learner enroll again asynchronously. So at any time, today, tomorrow, midnight, whenever it works best for their schedule, they have 20 weeks to complete the course. They can file for an extension if that's needed for learners. But when they start a course, let's say they're starting Algebra 1, the first thing that they'll do is take a pre-assessment. And that will start giving us kind of an idea of what they're already proficient in, what are their skills, and what are some areas that they need extra support in. Anything that they're already able to demonstrate proficiency in, they are then exempt from that content. So now we have learners that are much more engaged because they are working at what we call their just right spot. They're not just regurgitating facts, or as sometimes we maybe have experienced or our learners experience, sitting in a classroom and everything that has been shared with them that day, they already knew when they showed up and walked through the door. So that's been a huge focus. The other major shift is how we are reporting out. And so now you will see a whole list of all of the state standards, where they're aligned in all of their courses and where they are demonstrating proficiency. What is their level of proficiency as it relates to each one of those standards? So now families and teachers and learners have so much better of an idea of where they're truly at and what their skill set is. I always think back as a parent, if my child brings their report card home and it says they have a 92% in math or Algebra 1, what does that really tell me about the specific skills? What can they do? What are they not able to do? Where can I help support them as a family? So we've already received very positive feedback from our families, and that they just feel so much more connected. School seems less scary and daunting. And that increases our communication too with families. So it has been very exciting. I will say with a virtual school, there are some different nuances, as we don't own, for lack of better words, all of our learners. Sometimes they come to us for just a course or two. And so we had to make sure that through our reporting, we are also able to align to local school districts that don't have a competency-based system. So in that regard, we're really operating two systems, and we've been able to work through some of those challenges, but I know that was one of the kind of initial barriers that we had to work through. That's unique in our instance, where we're working with learners from, we're servicing learners not only in the state, but throughout the country as well. So that was one of the challenges that we had to work through, but again, excited to see the progress. We are well on our way, and the feedback that we are receiving from our learners and parents is really extraordinary.
So in North Dakota, then, what does your virtual landscape look like? I know in some states there's a state virtual school, that's it. And others, like in Michigan, we do have Michigan virtual, but then districts and ISDs can have individual virtual schools. So in North Dakota, are you the only virtual option then for students?
Yes, great question. So I would say, Lisa, we operate more like Michigan's landscape in that, yes, we are considered the state, K-12 virtual school. Local school districts can also stand up their own virtual academy. With that, I will say many of those virtual academies will use us for a portion or all. But what it allows local school district is that funding stays within that local school district, and then the learner is still part of the local district. So, there are advantages to setting things up that way as well. But a couple of years ago, we operate similar to Texas in that our legislatures meet a session is every other year. So the past or previous session, they passed law that school districts are now required to pay for, if it falls within a certain parameters, pay for any of the virtual courses that a learner wants to take through North Dakota Center for Distance Ed. And so that's where we've seen this immense growth of 56% just since the last biennium. So it's really incredible to see how our learners are enjoying that experience. And I do feel while virtual learning may not be for all learners in the same way that, brick and mortar traditional schooling may not be for all learners, it's a nice place to experiment and just get the hang of this whole virtual learning thing, especially for high school kids that are transitioning to, maybe college, post-secondary academics, where they oftentimes are required to take at least one virtual course. And so it's kind of like the soft landing place where they can gain some confidence and understanding of what virtual learning means and looks like as we kind of help them navigate that. So that's been another kind of success story from NDCDE.
Mhm. That's wonderful. Skyly, are you there?
Yes.
Okay, so you have had experience in that virtual world. Like the three of the other panelists have talked about different things in the virtual world, but you have lived that. Based on the ages of them and myself, we didn't get to experience going to school, in the K-12 environment in a virtual setting. So you have that unique perspective on this panel. And now you actually work for the virtual education program. So can you kind of just share your experience with us of, your experience as the student and then how that led you into what you're doing today?
Yes. So I love virtual learning. It's so valuable to me because it helped me become more independent and more organized. I had to take more responsibility for my own learning, which has improved like my time management skills, my communication skills, especially now that I'm adult in a workforce and I actually work for the school. What I find most valuable is the accessibility. So being able to log in from anywhere to complete work. It's shown me that education doesn't always have to happen in a traditional classroom. It can happen wherever I am as long as I stay motivated and focused. So that kind of gives me a new perspective with the students. I know a lot of them struggle with time management and kind of staying on task. So I can help them through that with my own experiences. I learned a lot of really good skills as a student that now kind of correlate with how I am as a working teacher. Time management, like I said, self-motivation and discipline. So online learning requires, an internal drive and commitment, helping students learn to stay focused and productive without direct supervision. Digital communication, I mean, we learned how to chat through email, video calls, kind of skills essential for modern remote jobs, and especially what I do now. Um, Organization, keeping track of assignments and schedules, communications with teachers, that's a skill necessary in any career. Adaptability, you have to navigate different online platforms and adjusting to those new formats teaches students how to be flexible and open to change. Accountability, once again, virtual learning, it takes the responsibility for the student, promoting accountability for one's own work and progress. Technology proficiency, so daily use of digital tools and platforms, that's something that I've come to do every day in my job now. in written communication with less face-to-face interactions. Students often engage more through writing, improving their clarity and professionalism in written communication. So those are just kind of some really good skills I learned as a student that I now carry into my job now.
I like how you tie that skills, because that's exactly what Jessica was just talking about. It isn't just the academic pieces. They had those three pieces. Academic was one of them, but skills is another one that's so important to be able to have. So, in terms of what you do now, what do with the students that you're working with, how, like, what would be your biggest challenge with them?
I would say accountability and time management. A lot of them struggle with meeting that goal in their class every day because, they they have silly answers. Like maybe they're out with friends, maybe they are spending a lot of time with family. So it's really about kind of sitting down and making that time and creating a schedule with them that kind of works through their day, so that they are able to make that time to log on to school for, let's say, 2 hours and complete some activities.
Which you could say in the workforce, that might be what employers say too.
Oh, yeah.
So, um, I'd like to open it up for questions for anyone that's participating in the call today. If you would like to have a question for any of the panel members, you can put it in the chat, or you can unmute your mic. Or if the panel members have questions for each other. Go ahead, Mitch.
Yeah, you're going to be really shocked that I'm going to ask a question about accountability. So in Texas, I have a couple of questions related to that specifically. The From what I'm finding when I search online, that it's not a universal accountability model. That each of those unique programs would have a unique, appropriate accountability model attached to that, or what does that look like for all of those variances in the programs?
Yeah, good question. So I would see it as a universal system, but I do want to maybe explain the nuance of our alternative ed accountability system, because that is unique. And if you wanted to do a hybrid or virtual kind of alternative ed campus or program, that has its own accountability system in Texas. But everything else, is held under the same A through F. We have an A through F system here in Texas. I always do want to mention a lot of folks talk about growth in the virtual space. They feel like virtual campuses get unfairly dinged because students come to them significantly below grade level and are never able to get appropriate proficiency by the end of the year, but they show significant growth. Well, the Texas accountability model for everybody already takes that into consideration. So our domain one of our accountability system is either proficiency or growth, and campuses and districts get the higher of the two. So that's important to note. That is for everybody. That's the system writ large. The other piece I would mention here is that on the back end, the punitive side of our A through F system, if you want to call it that, charter schools have a three strikes law in Texas, meaning if you get three unacceptable ratings in a row, then your charter is revoked. That is more strict than what happens with ISDs in Texas. Um, I don't want to get too far into the nuance in the weeds because it's a long conversation, but state takeover of ISDs can happen and is happening. If you watch the news, Houston ISD is under state control right now because of chronic low performance. But we mirrored in our bill the charter school accountability law. We did that a little bit of as a compromise to say, hey, we know that there's been bad actors in this space in other places. There's a little bit of a concern about quality. So we're going to have a little bit of a higher bar than the traditional ISD accountability system. And we're going to mirror that after the charter accountability system. So it's parity, but parity to the charter component. Does that help answer your question, Mitch? Or maybe you have a nuanced question as a follow-up?
You already answered my follow-up, which was specific to an alternative education program. So that was really helpful. And I get my question around Kentucky is it also seems like a more universal accountability. I don't necessarily understand the tiered A programs that I'm reading yet. I haven't spent enough time with that, but could you speak a little bit to that, Dan, also on what that looks like specifically in Kentucky and how that plays out?
Yeah, we're still trying to figure that piece out. We're
Okay.
in that pilot world right now. They just released probably a month ago and said, "Hey, this is going to be the structure. It's just a matter of working out the nuances." Just as an example, I talked quite a bit about from a dashboard perspective, not being super numerically based. One of the other pilots is crazy numerically based. I mean, it's a ton, and I'm not saying that as a negative, but if that's what the community wants, then that's what that community will get, and we have something different. And so I think the goal in Kentucky is more, let's use this accountability system to reach our community individually, but then also use it to maybe collaborate across our schools to figure out how we can serve schools better from district to district to district. And so instead of it all being about the state looks down, maybe more the districts are looking across. That's kind of the moonshot. That's the word that our commissioner uses all the time. But in terms of all the details, yeah, those details are still in the opening phases.
Great. Thank you both. Appreciate it.
Other questions for our panel members?
I have a question for Jessica in the virtual learning platform. So we're transitioning to standard-based learning and competency-based learning and doing standard-based reporting out of grades versus traditional letter grades. So my question to you, in your virtual platform, are you reporting out actual competency scores and like a standard-based grade versus more traditional? And then how did you build the curriculum on the back end of that program?
Good questions, Jessica. Yeah, so we actually report out using both a traditional percentage. So for learners that are part of another school district that they're not, competency based, they still have that percentage. And then we also report the competency. So we're doing both. Up until this point, there was not a student information system that was capable of doing that. So we actually had to invest in building that out. We were able to do that we use Genius as our student information system. So we were able to work with their team to develop a complete, CBE system that would allow us to do both. And that will go in the marketplace for all districts, we're hoping this fall as we're finishing our piloting phase. So that was really exciting. As far as the curriculum goes, I will say it's very difficult to find curriculum vendors that offer things such as voice and choice in the virtual space, in the same way that we find our teachers often customizing a lot of the content and the assessments to meet that need. So what we've done is we may start with kind of an out-of-the-box virtual curriculum that we find that's engaging, that we've used some of our partners for decades. And then we do all of the customizing and updating to the assessments and any components of the content. But at least we have that base. So we aren't starting fresh, because building content and making sure that it's accessible for learners, etc., it's really daunting, and we offer over 300 courses. So that would be a lot to put on our teachers' shoulders. So there are vendors that are getting better at offering, customize, meeting learners where they're at, but we have found it to be best to kind of take that and then make those tweaks necessary.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And we use AI a lot. I will say that has been a game changer for, we have tools available, ChatGPT, Magic School, School AI, that our teachers are able to use to help build rubrics, the proficiency scales, those types of things that are huge time savers.
Mhm. Does anyone else have questions?
I had a quick question. As with Mitch, I could guess that you were going to ask about alternative ed and at-risk students. At least I bet you can, the both of you could probably guess what I'm going to ask. And that is just the population of homeschooling families and non-public families engaging. And I just took a quick look at the bill from the Texas bill and just I didn't read all 31 pages, but did a quick just word search on it to see if there were any references to homeschooling families and non-public families engaging in virtual learning, and maybe it's the ESA element to it. Yeah. But that was just my question in terms of inclusiveness of that particular group.
It's a really good question. It's something that we talked a lot about, and actually districts, ISDs were actually already telling us. We've actually seen an ability to recruit students back, if you want to call it, back into the system, um, because the families wanted these flexible options, and a lot of times weren't able to provide, especially when they get a little bit older, those specialized content areas. They reach the limit of the parent a lot of times. And so a couple of things on that. There is a provision in the bill specifically, which this is, again, I'm going to try not to go too far into the bill. And if anybody wants to set up time to talk about nuts and bolts, I could spend hours talking about the bill. So please reach out to me. But the bill does 3 pathways: courses, programs, and campuses for and 2 modalities: hybrid and virtual. So there's really 6 options, if you want to call it that. For the full-time virtual campuses, there is a requirement, a 6-week prior public school requirement that would keep those homeschool and private school families from directly enrolling in a full-time virtual campus before coming into the traditional system in some way. Now, there's enough vague language there. We believe that there are plenty of workarounds, but there was a concern from a specific member of the commission and one of the legislators about this huge influx of private school and homeschool kids, and it inflating the fiscal note of our bill and making it seem like it was going to be crazy expensive, because the way the legislative budget board is, they have to say, what if every homeschool kid in Texas overnight enrolled in our public school system, and how much would that cost us? Even though we all know that would never happen. But that's the way the legislature works. So as a way to keep the fiscal note down and to work with that specific member, we had to put that in there. Now, that doesn't mean they can't do a 6-week summer school orientation that is light touch. They show up one day and, they get everything else synchronous and asynchronous. But that is in there. Now, to your point, we do see, and the governor's office is very excited about, which is why this was a part of the school choice emergency item for them, the ESA bill and this virtual and hybrid bill working together in tandem. Homeschool families under our new ESA program will receive up to $2,000 for appropriate uses. And that could be, and we are hoping and expecting, ISDs and charter schools to offer these hybrid and virtual courses that homeschool families could use their ESA dollars on. We've actually already had somebody who's doing awesome work in a rural part of South Texas have local family members want to enroll in homeschool family members want to enroll in his CTE program. He's got an awesome welding program in that community. And the homeschool families have already come to ask him, hey, can we send our kids to you? And so we're already having those conversations about how does the ESA bill and the virtual hybrid bill work together? So it's a great question.
Thank you. That's great. Does anyone have any other questions? Okay, I thank you, everyone who's on the panel. I really appreciate the insight that you shared, as well as adding to the chat as I was involved in the conversation. I'm glad you guys were in that chat adding information. So if anyone that is on this call or watches this recording has any questions or would like to get in contact with the panel members, feel free to connect with me. And I can connect you with the members or the panel members. So thank you all, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.